Welcome back to the Drum Show podcast, and we are going to be talking this, I don't know, maybe it'll take longer than I think it will. I had a good question from one of my students in the Drum Better Daily program. I run an online drum school and have for the past 10 years. And one of my students had a very good question. They emailed in and they had been working on something for months and months and months and months, technique, and had not really been seeing it in progress, and were just stuck. They were just stuck with where they were. And I said, okay, I think this is a very good opportunity to leave it alone for a while. So move on to something else. Come back to this later at some time. But for right now, let's leave it alone because you've kind of exasperated it. And they felt like I was telling them, we need to abandon it, we need to quit it. And that's not at all what I was saying. And so I followed up with them and we kind of got in an in-depth conversation on one of the things that's really helped me see the most progress in my practice time throughout the years, especially whenever I've hit a wall. So if you've hit a wall with your practice time, this could really help you. I know it has me in the past, and it's something I call cross-training. And so I went on to explain to them that no, and as a matter of fact, I'm doing anything but suggesting they quit. I'm suggesting they take a different route. So sometimes whenever my way home is blocked up with traffic from the studio, I like to go the back route anyway, but I'll go a side route. So I'm going in the same direction, but maybe a few more miles to get there. But because the main road is clogged up, it's a great way for me to get home in a timely manner. And so sometimes whenever we've just been banging our head against the wall with a topic in our practice time, we really have been putting in the work, we really have been doing focused practice, we really have been doing all those things. Sometimes we still don't see that progress, and that can be really discouraging. And part of practice is we have a fantastic computer between our ears. It's just made out of meat. It's just made out of protein and blood cells. And if we give it time to do what it does well, which is learn, it's actually very, very good at its job. The problem is sometimes we want to rush it. And your brain will learn as fast as your brain learns. What you have to do is you have to give that brain time to carve those new neural pathways. You have to give it time to insulate those pathways with myelin so that we've got this high-speed fiber in there that can shoot information back and forth. It's what that white and gray matter in your brain is. And so to do that, sometimes the brain just needs a little bit more time with the information and not necessarily time sitting at the drum kit. Our brains continue to work when we leave the drums. And many studies have found that just as important as practice time, if not more important, is recovery time. So what are we doing to recover before our next deliberate practice session? We always think that the work we do is in the practice room, whereas I know that much of the work I do is outside of the practice room. How am I sleeping? How am I eating? Am I getting enough recreational companionship? You know, all of these things help to help us learn. They really do. So cross-training is something that we can use whenever we've hit one of those walls. And it's a really simple concept, and it's used in a lot of other fields. I was a personal trainer for a few years while I was turning my music career from being on the road and playing live to doing more studio work and teaching full-time online, although I do still play out and do my own original projects. But so I took up personal training to kind of take some pressure off of music. And in personal training, I used cross-training all the time. And what that is let's say we have someone that's going for sheer mass. They want to gain mass. They want to gain some weight in muscle mass. We're pushing heavy weights, we're pushing heavy weights, we're pushing heavy weights. And then we hit a plateau. And when we hit that plateau, what happens is we need to shock the body. The body needs to be shocked, and shocking it will not happen by doing the same thing you've been doing. So what we do, instead of going heavy weight, low reps, which is typically what you do gaining, if you want to gain significant mass, what we would do is we'd come at it from the side angle, and we would start doing drop sets, supersets, giant sets, high rep. One of the best workouts I ever had was where I took a week and I did very specific exercises for very certain body parts, and the goal was to get to 100 in a row. It didn't matter how much you had to drop the weight, didn't it? You just had to keep going. So if you had to get on there and shave 10 pounds, go, go, go. Shave 10 more, go, go, go until you got to 100. The next week, I saw some of the biggest gains I had ever seen. And the reason is you're working at that muscle from a different angle. Let's say you're trying to get your bench press better and you've been pushing heavy weight, and then I come in and I say, okay, well, we're going to, or let's say, a good example would be, let's say we're going to get our triceps. The triceps are the back of the arm, that horseshoe-looking muscle. And you've been lifting heavy weight, and I come in and I say, okay, we're not working triceps at all for the next 2 weeks. What we're going to do is overload your chest. And so and my clients would go, I don't understand how that's going to help, but your triceps are large secondary movers in the bench press. And so by focusing on heavy overloading the bench press, we're also overloading our triceps naturally. And so when we come back to those triceps, most of the time we've seen gains. So this is an example of something I would call cross training, where we're training another area or we're doing something completely different to see the gains that we want to do. So in your drumming, in your music, whenever you've been working, and you're banging your head against the wall, you're showing up for practice and you're doing what you're supposed to, and you're just still not seeing the progress, it might be time to temporarily leave the topic. Now, write down a time when maybe you'll come back to it. We're not abandoning it. But we may need to leave and go focus on something else. This does a couple of things. The first thing it does is it re-energizes us creatively. So we have new information, we get new exercises. All of these things help us to become re-energized mentally. And that's very important in our practice time. What also happens, though, is, it's not an isolated thing. You don't work technique exercises and then never use technique in anything else you do. You don't work hand and foot studies and then you never use that in your drum beats and grooves and fills. It all overlaps. And so by focusing on something else, we take the pressure off of the brain to perform, and we give it time to just soak up what we've been trying to shove in, its ears for so many months. And if you will do that and very specifically say, okay, I've been working on technique, I feel like I've hit a wall with it, I'm so burned down on it. Right now, I think I'm going to focus on X, Y, Z, whatever you want to focus on. I'm going to focus on learning more songs for the band I'm in. I'm going to focus on working on my hand and foot hand and foot coordination. I'm going to focus on, my samba. I'm going to focus on learning mambo. I'm going to, whatever that may be for you. But essentially, you just leave it alone for a while. What you'll find is when you come back to it, you have either not gone backwards at all. That's probably not going to happen. But what you'll also find is that many times you've gone forward. Many times you're like, oh, wait a second, this is working. This wasn't working that's why you ever had the experience of going to bed and then waking up the next morning, you're like, oh, crap, I can do this. I couldn't do this yesterday. Or going to bed and getting up and being like, why can't I do this? I was doing this well yesterday. These are all parts of the brain just going through the learning process. And sometimes it gets stuck and spins in place. And sometimes that's when we show up and we're like, okay, I can't play anything today. That's okay. That's okay. It's just another day. Chalk it up to natural processes, come back the next day. So whenever you find yourself stuck in your practice time, it may be time to temporarily leave that topic and do some cross training. Go train another area of your musicality, of your playing, and then come back to it. One thing that I've been doing here lately is I bought a vibraphone. Most guys, when they turn 40, they buy cool things for midlife crisis. Like they get tattoos, they buy a Harley or something. And I bought a vibraphone. I think my wife's still wondering if I'm okay. And I've been practicing a lot of mallets, a lot of vibraphone, tonal instruments, melodic. And that has been very, very inspiring for me on the drum set. It's inspired a lot of creativity and a lot of ideas. Why is that? I'm not playing the drum set. No, but I'm opening up other pathways in my brain. Music's music. The drum set is it's my instrument to be able to engage in music. But I can engage in music with a vibraphone just as easily. And so don't view it as better or worse. Just view it as I'm going to do this different thing, and that is going to contribute to a better relationship overall with this instrument. Take marriage, for instance. I'll kind of wrap up with this analogy. In my marriage, it's very important that communication is a very, very at the forefront. We want to work on our communication. So, maybe you've decided like, we're going to go to counseling and really dig in and learn each other. And so you go to counseling and then you just hit a point where you're like, oh my gosh, if I have to talk about my past, like that, oh my, it's important and I get it, but I'm so sick of talking about my past. So you're like, okay, let's hit the pause button here. I'm just tired of it. We're kind of in a rut now with the counseling. Let's go do something else. So all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to focus on recreational fun with my spouse. So now you're focused on, let's have quality time, let's engage. Do you think this is better or worse for your communication? It's better. You're learning to communicate in a different way, to use those tools that you've been learning. You're now using them in the real world. And then when you come back to that counseling, you want to dig back into that stuff again. By the way, if you're married, counseling's a good thing. I think everybody should go. It's a great thing. You grow leaps and bounds, It's one of those, cheat codes that you can use in your relationship to get further down the road than you would have been. And when you come back, you're communicating better. Things have worked themselves out in some ways. And then you have some new things to talk about, you're re-energized. So let me encourage you, if you're stuck in your drumming, that's okay. That's normal. Don't worry about it. Maybe do some cross-training. Go work on something different. Make a note. I'm going to come back to this topic. But for right now, I'm going to go do this other stuff. And don't freak out about it. It's going to be all right. It's just practice. It's just music. If you need some help with your drumming, I'd love to have you in the Drum Better Daily program. It's an online drum school with an awesome community of drummers. Hundreds of lessons in there, weekly live Q&A calls, monthly guest artists coming in. We got the drummer for Brad Paisley, Ben Caesar coming in. We've got the drummer for Beartooth coming in. I mean, we're always doing these things and trying new things live. We got the forums. We got quick tips. There's so much in there for you, over 70 courses. And I'm there making personalized lesson plans, answering your questions, doing student reviews. I just got to do two student video reviews. So if you want, you can find that link in the show notes. And I believe there will be a 14-day free trial going on also. So you can snag that if you'd like. All that's going to be in the show notes. StevensDrumShed.com or DrumBetterDaily.com. I'd love to have you be a part of it. But whatever you do, go practice, have fun, play some music, and I'll see you in the next show.